Hello everyone, welcome to the Art Lounge Alley. This is Figure Drawing Basics Part 85. I am gonna jump right into it. Unfortunately I had to take a couple of days off to recover from the sickness. It's kind of strange, but I'm a lot better now. And I'm glad to be back on the stream, glad to be back at the Art Lounge Alley. I'm going to continue from where I left off last week, which is showing you guys like the step-by-step process for drawing any part of the face and any type of face really. And today I'm going to be doing a baby face. So just like all the other steps for all these other faces, it'll be the same exact thing. So again, starting out with a circle, and this goes back to like the very first episode where or very first stream rather, where I talk about the importance of drawing a perfect circle and how that is your basis for pretty much all parts of the body. That is your basis for the face as well when you're first starting out. And you want to make sure that it's in as perfect of a circle as possible, because if you change the shape of it, if you don't really pay that much attention to it, it's going to warp the rest of the body. And I'm going to show you guys a quick example actually from the past streams, from the past chapters, where I demonstrate what happens exactly. This is one example here, but there's a better one where I show like multiple examples of what happens. Where are you? Where are you? I know it's around here somewhere. It's one of these pages. By the way, a lot of these pages that you guys are seeing, all these instructions, all these guidelines and ways of drawing the figure and getting the anatomy right, that's all available on the Patreon page. You guys can check that out by going to the About section of the stream. Is this it? No, that's the one that I was talking about earlier. And heading over all the way to the right-hand side, you'll see the link to the Patreon page. Check it out. They're all different types of tiers. It's not only just access to my finished work that I have on there or exclusive content. You guys also have opportunities to be part of the Art Lounge Alley stream, to have your work critiqued, to get some private lessons. There's multiple tiers. One of them, you guys get to promote your work, you know, become a featured artist on the Art Lounge Alley, which I think is pretty cool. I'm looking forward to seeing some. Oh, there you go. This is a good example of that. But you guys can check that out. You guys also can check out all the previous streams, including all the previous special intros, by going to the video section in the Twitch channel and filtering based on collection. And once you do that, you'll see a folder for each and every stream. There's a folder called Highlights, which has all the special streams that I've had streaming previously, and all the previous streams for each of the streams. So all the streams for drawing basics, for coloring comics, for drawing comics, for the project stream, etc. So as I was talking about before, when you don't focus on how well you draw the circle, which is the basis for the head, it's going to warp the entire body basically, because you're going to use the head as the unit of measurement to make sure everything else is proportionate. You guys might have noticed I changed the music. It was getting a little redundant. There were a couple of songs that were just replaying over and over again. So I chose something pretty chill. I like jazz. It's a nice mix-up. Yeah, anyways, going back to this. So as you could see, if you don't pay attention to how you draw the first part of the head, which is the circle, you could see here it's an oblong shape. you're going to be using the head as a unit of measurement. So if you, for example, try to measure the width of the arm, right? If you're just starting out, you don't have the eye attention or the eye for detail developed yet to notice like what the width of the arm is. So the rule is, the way you could find out is by measuring half the head. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to draw the line down the middle, the guideline down the middle, to figure out what the half is. So in this case, you know, let's say the artist, he drew the head kind of oblong, didn't really pay attention to how he drew it, and he measures half the head. Now that makes sense, right? You measure it, look at that, it measures up here. Now do the other side, you measure half that head, and it's weird. You know, it's much more narrow than this one. And the same thing applies for other features in the body. I'm not going to get too into it. You guys can always find that those streams talking about all these different principles in the history. But yeah, just a brief overview of why it's important to make sure that when you draw the circle, that it's as close to being a perfect circle as possible. You don't want to have a warped body like this. And you want to rely on the head as the unit of measurement to get the most accurate results when it comes to drawing the figure. So yeah, getting back to this, it's a baby head. It's different, you know, it's a little bit different than the rest of the face examples here, but the principle stays the same. Like what I'm showing you guys now, these tips and tricks, these guidelines, they still apply even to the head of an infant. So I'm starting out. It's going to be a 3/4 view, so I'm starting out by drawing these guidelines here. Really important. You know, one of the things that you want to make sure when you are drawing the face is things are lined up. So the eyes are on the same line. You don't want one eye to be higher or lower than the other. It's going to break your drawing. And it's just a good way to establish that proximity between features of the face as well. So for instance, like how close is one eye to the center line right here as opposed to the other. So in this 3/4 view, it's going to be a little bit different, you know, because it is angled. Certain features will be a little bit closer towards the middle line, while others are a little bit further away. But at least that's there for you to be able to measure that distance. You don't want the one eye to be close to the middle line and the other one being also close to the middle line in this perspective. So these guidelines help to ensure that for you. Big reason for including these guidelines in the beginning. So the process is very much similar to this one, as you guys have seen from previous streams. This one as well. I'm going to start also putting down the line for the eyebrows, which is also the line that is going to help you establish where the ears are supposed to be on the face, where they start, where they end, that sort of thing. And remember, a lot of this stuff is they're placeholders. So you can mark these areas. You could be like, okay, this is where the nose is, this is where the mouth is going to be. And then as you go, you know, since we are keeping it pretty light, you know, I'm not pressing hard. I'm really trying to keep this in sort of a free-flowing sketch vibe. You know, I'm not dedicating myself to any details yet. It's just the time to like sketch things out. Making these adjustments. And one of the things you will notice when it comes to infants, when it comes to drawing babies, a lot of their features, they're kind of shrunk. The nose hasn't developed yet. It's in its first stages of growing. So it's going to be, that's why they have like button noses or so. It's still in that early stage. So the proximity between the nostril and the eye is a lot shorter. Like this gap right here, I want to make sure you guys could see it, between the corner of the eye and the nostril is very short. And that's a very, very important detail, because if you elongate that, that's going to make the nose look longer. And that's already the wrong feature for when it comes to the baby. And in general, it's a really important thing to look out for, because even in adults, if you make that distance between the eye and the nose, that gap between the eye and the nose really long, it's gonna, first of all, it's gonna break the drawing. It's gonna look weird. The face is gonna look weird. And yeah, that pretty much is. It's not proportionate. You just wouldn't, it wouldn't look right. But when it comes to drawing the face of a baby, it's even more so of a short distance between those features. Also kind of chubby, right? Most kids are on the chubby side, so I'm just adding a little bit of a double chin there. Kind of helps. And notice that where the ear starts or ends, depending if you're looking from the top down or the bottom up, it's on the same line as where the nose starts or ends. If you're looking from the bottom going up, this would be that line right there. And this is also where the ear would start. And as I mentioned, the line for the eyebrows, this line right here, that could help you figure out, okay, this is how far it's supposed to go, or this is where it starts. Again, depending where you're starting from. You're going from the top down or from the bottom up. So that's something to look out for. Still keeping it light, as you guys see. Not pressing too hard on anything. They still don't have a lot of hair on their heads, so it's not going to go too heavy on there. Was kind of appropriate for what I was drawing. It's like a lullaby song. All right, pretzel. little by little adding more features. Some shadows. Oh, and also, for those of you who are wondering, like, where's the special stream? And you guys might have missed the text at the bottom of the promotion for the stream. It is at 9 o'clock tonight. So after this stream, instead of the project stream, which might still continue afterwards, it really depends on how much is covered, how much I talk about each artist, that sort of thing. I might still be jumping back into the project stream, but I'm pretty sure, could be wrong, I'm pretty sure it might take up the entire stream. So at 9 o'clock tonight, I'm going to be happy to continue on with Gil Elvgren's work. One of my favorite artists, an amazing painter, amazing artist in general. And I get to continue on talking about his influences, and you guys will see more artists that really inspired him to push his work to the level that he did, and creating all that beautiful work that you guys have seen in the first part. So make sure you stick around afterwards for that. That's going to be coming up next. We still got a long while to go for the figure drawing sesh. Getting like Peanuts vibe here, like Charlie Brown. And I think right here in this feature is where you start to really see how this is like an infant's face. And that's the lack of teeth. It's all soft in there. No teeth have been developed yet. some shadows there to give them more texture, more roundness, rather. And imprints usually just have very puffy features. Now we have yet to grow into all of these features, so there's a lot of excess there.
Check it out.
So as you guys saw, all of this was worked in layers. How light it started out, right? Where you guys saw me starting out with the circle and then the cup shape underneath and then having to draw those guidelines. And then eventually, just little by little, once I started to see that things look like they're in place, you know, where the eyes are lining up on the same line, nostrils as well, they're lining up on that same line. So the mouth is in perspective. And then once that started to feel right, or it started to look right, then I took it to the next stage of pressing a little bit harder in order to define these features more. So working in layers really, really helps. It ensures everything looks right before you commit to any sort of lines, dark lines that is. And gives you a little bit of wiggle room if you were to make a mistake. It's not too late. You could erase, you could just move, shift things down a little bit, shift things up a little bit, depending on what you need to do. So there are multiple benefits to it. And it's less of a stressful sort of process, because if you start pressing hard, the pressure is on. You know, you're like, oh, I know, now I have to commit to every single thing that I do after that line. You could still erase, you know, of course that's still there as long as you're working with a pencil. It's just that it, what's going to happen is it's gonna leave residue. It's gonna leave marks, of it being ingrained into the paper, and that's gonna interfere with you making better lines. Sometimes if it's ingrained into the paper, you're trying to shift things over just a little bit, because that really could make a huge difference. Your pencil will fall into that groove again. That's that mark that's on the paper, and you're gonna have to battle with that part, with that history, basically, over and over and over again. So to avoid that whole process, it's best to just sketch out lightly. I'm not going to spend way too much time on this one. I'm pretty sure this is about as much as I like to work on this. But you guys can see that the most important part about drawing an infant's face is that gap that I mentioned between the corner of the eye and the nostril, it being very short. And I think even in my drawing, I might have actually drawn it a little too far. I think it has to be even shorter than that. So I'm going to go ahead and actually make that correction. Didn't press too hard there, so it's not too late to go back and make that adjustment. But yeah, that is one of the biggest distinctions between all the other faces, especially when it comes to adults. So when you are drawing kids, from whatever scene in comic books or illustrations or whatever it is that you're doing. It's really important to pay attention to that. Also, exaggerating the cheeks, for example, that part as well. And overall, there's more roundness to the kid because, as I mentioned, they're still not, a lot of their features are not developed yet. So jawline, for example, there almost wouldn't be one. You know, there's still just a lot of fat that is going to be eventually stretched out as their features start to grow. Going to do a little more definition for the ear, and then I'm going to move on to the next part of all this. But overall, just wanted to demonstrate to you guys that regardless of what age, what gender, you're still approaching the drawing in the same fashion. You're still sketching things out, keeping it light, creating the guidelines, and layering on the detail. All very helpful in order to have like a consistent flowing sort of approach to a drawing from start to finish. And for those of you who are brave enough to get out of your comfort zone and start actually taking this approach of, you know, starting with a circle, creating those guidelines, first of all, you're doing great because you are taking it to the next step. You are learning how to have more structure in your drawings and more of a reliable approach that's going to give you pretty consistent results. Because I found, when I was younger and I was drawing, even though there were times where I did get really good results from starting at any point within the drawing, let's say starting out with the eyes, and then from the eyes, according to proximity to other features, I would keep building from there. You know, this is a very common way of drawing for a lot of people who are teaching themselves to draw, for example. And I would get pretty good results the more and more I pushed myself to notice differences and all that. But essentially it became more and more challenging as I started to draw from imagination, when I wasn't doing from references, when I wasn't looking at something in order to get the accuracy that I wanted. It became very challenging because I didn't know what I was supposed to do in order to make sure things look right, you know, working from imagination. So having this structure, having this process that you guys saw from start to finish, also helps you when you're drawing from imagination, when you aren't looking at photo reference or whatever else. You know, you know that, okay, once I draw these lines, the eyes are supposed to line up according to this line. You know, you establish the very first thing that you do is you first figure out what perspective you want it to be on. Is it going to be a frontal perspective, right, where it's just straight onto the face? Is it going to be a 3/4 view? Is it going to be from slightly from the top or from the bottom angle? And then from there, you can create the guidelines for it, right? Like as you saw here, the guidelines were at 3/4, so there's that line going down the middle. The camera isn't going all the way from the top, so the lines that are forming, the guidelines that are forming to make sure that the eyes are lined up, the nostrils are lined up, etc., they had a curvature going upwards. They were going up instead of being formed this way. So yeah, once you establish that, once you establish the angle, the perspective, then from there, those guidelines become essential. You're working from your imagination. Then you have something to go off of. Whereas it becomes more challenging if you're doing it from imagination to start off from somewhere and then build. If you don't understand all these principles, or if you haven't really figured that out yet, like, oh, they're supposed to really line up on the same line at an angle if it's angled face, straight if it's a straight on face, etc. And also working in 3D rather than just flat lines, right? Like you're just starting out with some part. And it's just line work at that point, or at that approach. You're just depending on your line work to guide you along. Whereas the process you saw was more 3-dimensional. You're first thinking about it, okay, if the entire face is this shape, where would things be, etc., etc. And the more you become familiar with it, the better understanding you have of the face 3-dimensionally, of the head 3-dimensionally, and it becomes at your disposal to be able to change things in terms of like angle, in terms of perspective, in terms of you know, all those things, shape, etc. So I also encourage you guys to get one of these, or to venture into clay work a little bit so that you could construct yourself a bust similar to this. That way you guys can actually study the face according to whatever angle that you want. And you will have a better understanding 3-dimensionally because you would have to construct everything. So it will challenge you to look at things in profile, like, does it look right when I'm constructing it this way? These features are supposed to be jotting out. Some features are supposed to be more prominent than others. For example, the nose is supposed to be more prominent than the cheekbones, but the cheekbones have to be present there because of the skeletal structure. And then, of course, the top of the lips have to be protruding a little bit for the opening, and the bottom of the lips are supposed to be protruding out for the opening as well, the chin, etc. So it's really going to push you to try to understand. But if you don't really want to do that just yet, if that seems like it's too intimidating, you could always purchase one of these as well. There are busts out there that you could look at, and that allows you to study it in light as well. You know, as you could see, depending on the light source, I can have the light source changed to get the right perspective. But be careful when it comes to changing the light source and working traditionally, that you don't end up blocking your own view on the paper. So even though you're constructing the light source according to how you want it to be seen on the bust or on the figure, that might end up being disfavorable to you drawing. So for example, here, if you guys notice, if I don't have my light source correctly, like even though I could see the drawing, take a look at how much shadow is formed from the pencil itself. You see that right there? That's kind of obstructing your vision of what's going on. And it's constantly kind of like, the shadow is like in your line of vision all the time, and it's flickering around, and it kind of distracts. This is what I find personally to be problematic. It just something there, you know, that's kind of constantly like, you know, when you see something in the corner of your eye, your attention is gravitated towards it. So it's like the same thing here. You're not so much focused on the drawing. It's a bit of a distraction. So pay attention to that. And as you could see, huge difference there. Even though there's still shadow, as you could see by the pencil, it's not as obstructive in your vision. You get more view of the entire drawing all around. So it might be helpful to have another light source for the figure or the head. You know, something so that you could set it up and you could be like, oh, okay, in this light, how does it look? In this light, how does it look? Without having to sacrifice the light source for your paper, for your drawing. So there's another little tip for you. Ooh. All right, so then moving on, this is actually a really cool one. I think this one is also very informative. It is I'm gonna start a new page here. It's using the same face, but creating many different types from the same model. So I'm gonna start out with one. Most likely, I'm not gonna be able to finish all of it in this one go. But I'm gonna start out with a quick sketch of it. And this is going to be the basis. This is going to be like the original, let's just say, model that everything else is going to be based off of. And you guys are going to see how that's going to be shaped for other types of faces. And it's a very, very, very useful concept. You won't have to, and it's also going to challenge it, you know, because you're going to have to work from your imagination to create other models or different types of that model, while still having a reference, not completely relying on your imagination. As you guys see, I'm keeping a distance from the tip of the pencil. I think personally, and this is something that I mention very frequently, it allows me to have a better scope of what's going on the drawing. It keeps me from getting into meticulous little details. So if you see, just from this example, when I'm holding the pencil like this, how much of the drawing my fingers are covering up. You know, and it does kind of push me to zoom in because I can't see the entire drawing. I could only see a portion of where the tip of the pencil is. It pushes me to kind of focus on that area only, going into really small details, trying to perfect it, rather than sticking to that stage that I was talking about before in the beginning, which is just fleshing things out quickly, just making sure things are in places that you'd want them to be, you know, and according to other features. It really helps. It helps with proportion, it helps with anatomy. So I think it's something to really keep in mind. similar to all other examples, you guys could see the ears, where they start or end, is on the same line as the eyebrow. Of course, there's curvature to it. Kind of enjoying this music. I think I got really zoomed in on the drawing and got carried away listening to the music as well. But it really is just trying to flesh out this model, basically. So this model is going to be where I'm going to be developing other faces, but based off of this. just trying to get it down as much as possible. Unfortunately, I don't see having the time to start another one today. But I will be back tomorrow for more figure drawing basics at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, same time as today, same time as always, at least for now. And I will be starting then the new model, and you guys will see how it's going to be very similar. But I'm gonna adjust a couple of things here and there in order to still maintain it, but just show you guys what that process is like. And what you could do, what you could change around, yet still kind of retain some parts of the model. And with that said, y'all, I'm gonna have to cut the stream here and get ready for the special intro. Kill Elfgren Part 2. I'm really excited about that. I hope you guys are too. And let's see some interesting art. Let's see some cool, beautiful paintings. That's coming up next at the Art Lounge Alley. If you guys enjoy this content, remember to hit the like and subscribe button. They both help the stream, and of course, they're greatly appreciated by yours truly. I'm going to take that 5-minute break now, guys, and I will see you then.